Hi everyone, my name is Judy West and I oversee staff and leadership development at The Crossing in Chesterfield, Missouri, which is right outside of St. Louis. When Leadership Network asked me to do this, to speak for 9 minutes on one thing that I was passionate about that I would want to tell leaders all across the nation, I immediately knew what it was, but then I thought, how do I convey it in a way that doesn't make me look arrogant or cocky or have my act together, and how do I share it in a way that they know my heart? So the best way I knew how to do that was through my story. So I'm going to share a bit of my story, and hopefully I'll land the plane in under 9 minutes. I grew up in a small town in rural Pennsylvania, and one of my first recollections as a kid was spending the night at my grandparents' house. And late one night, with my brothers behind me, we crawled on the floor to pick up a phone. It was a rotary phone, one of those really old phones, and I remember dialing it. It was really loud, going, "Oh, please don't let them hear us. Please don't let them hear us." I remember picking up the phone and saying, "Mom and Dad, come and get us now. Grandpa's down in the kitchen beating Grandma." What you need to know about that was my grandfather was known as this upstanding man in the community. He had all these awards. He was part of Rotary, and he was a deacon in the local church. So very early on, age kindergarten, first grade, I learned that the church had hypocrites in it. So fast forward all through my growing up, and I can't really tell you that my interaction with Christ followers was much better than that. It seemed like every time I met a Jesus follower, they were either really boring and lifeless and dull or really mean. I grew up in the age of all the abortion clinic bombings and the televangelists going to prison, all the news stories all over TV, so my perception of Christ followers wasn't really a great perception. So fast forward 8 years, and here I end up in St. Louis. My husband gets transferred here for his residency program, get pregnant, and one day I just happened to walk out into our neighborhood and decide, well, I'm pregnant and I think you're supposed to have a baby baptized. Don't know why, don't know any theology behind baptism. So I walk out and say to all these moms in the neighborhood, "Hey, anybody know of a church? I need a church." Well, the first woman says, "Do not go to my church. I don't even go to my church." And the next woman says, "Oh God, don't go to mine." And they go all around the circle, "Don't go to my church." And finally, there's this woman, beautiful, fun, full of life, says to me, "Judy, I would love for you to come to our church." Now, it's a brand new startup church. We're meeting in a school. And it's probably not like the church you have a picture of. There's a live band with contemporary music. You can wear jeans. There's relevant teaching. So that Sunday, I'm 6 months pregnant, I waddle in, sit down, the first drum beat starts, and for the next hour, I couldn't breathe. See, all I could remember was back to years before, sitting on my bed in college and having the TV on, and either 60 Minutes, 2020, something was on the TV. And it was the show featuring this church outside in the suburbs of Chicago called Willow Creek Community Church, where the teaching was relevant. There was a live band, contemporary music, where you could wear jeans, and it was a safe place to ask your God questions. And I remember way back then saying, when I grow up, I'm going to move to Chicago because maybe there I could find God. So here I am, sitting in St. Louis going, "This is the church I saw on TV." That was the day I knew if there was a God, this is the place I could seek him out and ask all the questions I had. So you combine that with this neighbor. Now, this neighbor was so different. She was this amazing Christ follower. She had this really strong marriage. Her and her husband were just awesome. They were intimate, they had fun, they were phenomenal parents, they resolved conflict well. If they had a bump with each other, they would go to each other with language that was really safe, and they would resolve it quickly. They set boundaries. They would say yes to certain things and no to certain things. They just did life differently. Well, lo and behold, that couple ended up being our lead pastor and his wife, Greg and Robin Holder. So, which, by the way, back then in the neighborhood, they'll tell you this now, they referred to me in love when I first moved here as the atheist feminazi from Philadelphia. I was kind of a mixture of Anne Lamott and Lee Strobel all in one. Anyway, a year later, after I started investigating Jesus, I gave my life to Christ, and kind of like a Saul to Paul conversion. So, Greg ends up coming on staff as our lead pastor in 1997, and he invites me on staff in 1998. Well, very early on, you take Greg with his background in professional counseling and Christian counseling and his passion for Jesus and his word, and you combine it, and you get a lead pastor that is pretty passionate about healthy community, especially because we know we live in a culture with broken churches, broken relationships. A lot of us grew up with family of origins where community and relationship was not done well. So years ago, he said to me, Jude, how do we teach our people these basic skills of doing relationship well? How do we teach them Matthew 18 and resolving conflict? How do we teach them about boundaries? How do we teach them about receiving grace and giving grace? So he commissioned me, said, get a team, go develop something. So we came back a year later with this class called Body Life. It has revolutionized our church. It's changed marriages, it's changed relationships. It's basically for 6 weeks us role-playing, teaching, living out these basic skills of healthy community, like boundaries and conflict resolution, all this stuff. Well, I'll tell you what, man, I was just interviewing a woman last week who, this woman has grown up in the church. She knows the word front and back, and she said to me, Judy, Body Life changed my life. My marriage is different. My parenting is different. My relationships are different. I grew up in the church. Nothing has changed me more than the content, the scriptural content of this class and living it out. Well, what I need to say, and my big moment to all the leaders is this. Over the past 5 years, word has gotten out about Body Life. And I get calls from pastors and leaders saying, hey, my sister goes to your church. I'm in Phoenix. Can you share your curriculum? Or a pastor calling saying, hey, I got word about this class. And I always say, absolutely. I would love to share all the curriculum with you. But first, what I'm asking, go buy Pete Scazzero's book, The Emotionally Healthy Church. Read it. Read it with your lead pastor. Read it with your lead team. And if you can tell me that you all are attempting to live this out, you embrace it and you're living it out, because it's the best thing that we have in black and white that kind of exemplifies what Body Life is. If you can tell me that you embrace it, then absolutely I'll share all the curriculum with you. Well, it breaks my heart to tell you that in 5 years, one pastor has called me back. And I need to tell you, there's a lot of Jesus' teachings that can revolutionize this planet from the bottom level up. Servanthood. It can start at any level of the church and have a ripple effect. But this is one that has to start at the top and work its way down. If the senior leader and the senior leadership team aren't healthy, it's not going to work. Because I'll tell you that this is what we are so passionate about. If you are teaching the word, if you are leading, saying you are leading with Jesus, but you're beating your spouse in the kitchen, the gospel stops. The kingdom is torn apart. And for us, that's not good enough. We will beat this drum. We will preach it, live it out, teach it. We make mistakes every day. Please hear me on that. We are not perfect. But this is the drum we will beat until we are in the grave. And all we're asking is that you consider joining us. So that's my story, and hopefully I landed the plane in under 9 minutes. Thanks.